Particular reason for being here today is that Dawn and Kinnersley has just published the 10,000 Immortals, which is a Tomb Raider novel that we've co-written. We live and work together, and we write our own things a lot of the time, separately or side by side. But every now and then we work together on a project, and this happens to be one of them. So we're here specifically plugging that.
Yeah.
And a splendid book it is too.
Oh, we know.
Well, I guess, starting with the hard sell then, can you tell us a little bit about the story and obviously working with an iconic character like Lara Croft?
Yeah, there's this tomb, and she raids it.
Yeah,
no, it's sort of modern continuity Lara, so based on the most recent game incarnation, so the young, sort of not yet fully formed Lara Croft, and it's sort of essentially a high octane contemporary world set thriller, real world. There is strangeness in it, but it's not as strange as all that, and it fits securely into the continuity established by the first game and prior to the game that I believe is out next year. Yeah. And
she gets up to hijinks.
Hijinks, okay. You can elaborate on the hijinks at
all. And she travels, and she follows clues, and she seeks out wondrousness.
Yes, there are terrible villains and people who might be villains who aren't, and allies who might actually be villains, and it is very real world. One of the things that Nick did in particular was research that what might describe as the real world, so that the in sort of painstaking detail. Yeah,
it was great fun.
Great fun. Yeah, it suits her method of working. But there is, for example, a very exciting parkour sequence in Paris. And we can assure you that every ledge, windowsill, roof, ladder, and everything else
they're all there.
They're all actually there.
So if you do parkour,
yeah,
feel free.
If I'd been writing on my own, I'd have just made that up. But no,
no, we don't make things up.
Yeah.
Well, we do make things up.
Yeah. There you go.
Obviously Lara Croft's an iconic character, but she's often kind of reduced to some of the superficial traits and kind of dismissed.
What on earth do you mean?
Yeah, we've got daughters. In fact, we've got a daughter exactly Lara Croft's age, who's just finished actually 2 years of dance training. So that came in incredibly handy for some of the fight sequences, choreographing, that kind of thing. And also, not for nothing, I've been a 22-year-old woman. So I was actually quite keen to not mess with that stuff. She's a real, fully formed, feisty person first.
I think Lara Croft as a character has yes is sort of iconic, and possibly sometimes for the wrong reasons. But as the current incarnation, I think one of the reasons that it was rebooted in the last game is really about making her a more realistic, believable, genuine character rather than an objectified thing.
Yeah, but and that doesn't mean she can't be funny and sexy and all those things too. And I think the better for that.
Yeah.
Of course, Dan, you work on so many different projects.
Some would say too many.
Some would say too many. I'm curious, apart from this one that you're pushing here today, what else is on your horizon looking to the future?
I have, as usual, been extremely busy. I'm doing my usual slew of comic work, and the ones of the many things that I'm doing. Guardians 3000, I think, is the key thing for Marvel, which is having written the 2008 Guardians of the Galaxy comic that the movie was then sort of inspired by. Marvel have invited me back to take on the original 1969 incarnation of the team and write their comic, which is Guardians 3000 because it's set 1,000 years in the future. It's 3000 AD, 3014, and that's great. The first issue's out now, and having an enormous fun with that. I also have ventured into the realms of sort of creator-owned comics a little bit more with a series called Wild's End from Boom, which is essentially the elevator pitch would be the War of the Worlds meets the Wind and Willows. It's sort of anthropomorphic animals in jeopardy from a terrible threat, so it's a sort of classic children's literature mashed with H.G. Wells.
And it's brilliant.
And also a thing called Dark Ages from Dark Horse, which is set in the 100 Years' War, very realistic, but there is essentially an alien invasion, but the characters involved don't know it's that because they've got no frame of reference, so they see it as sort of the end of the world and the apocalypse. So yes, mainstream stuff, Infinite Crisis, Master of the Universe, Guardians of the Galaxy, Guardians 3000, all these sorts of things, and sort of inventing my own things as well, and continuing to do things for 2000 AD. and still writing novels. My current novel of choice, following from Tomb Raider, is a Mighty Avengers novel that will come out at the same time as. Is it called The Rise of Ultron? I think that's the current version of the
Age
of Ultron. There you go, Age of Ultron. Yes, must get it right, otherwise Marvel will come around my house and shoot me. Which is an original novel, but will have the sort of the movie characters in it, and that's in great fun. When Guardians came out, they asked me to do a Rocket Raccoon and Groot novel. It was the first time Marvel had done an original novel, and that was enormous fun. And they came back to me and said, "Would you do the same thing with the Avengers?" So yes, transferring superheroes into prose form is interesting because obviously you haven't got the wonderful art to support all the things that you would normally do.
And the games.
Oh, and games, yes. As if that wasn't enough. I've spent the last couple of years writing Alien Isolation, which has just come out from Creative Assembly, which has apparently gone down very well. And I wrote the orcs in Shadow of Mordor. It's got the Nemesis game system, whereby there are specific named orc characters that you engage with, so they're not generic orcs you hack your way through, but characters that remember you and have names and remember your personal history, which was probably the oddest job I've ever done. Their brief was that the orcs should talk like sort of Ray Winston or Ben Kingsley in a British gangster movie, which was great, but I had to invent 60 different orc characters that were distinct and memorable. And it was over a very short space of time, so I was sitting there writing dialogue into a spreadsheet for all the different conditions that the game would need. And
talking like that.
And I found the easiest way of seeing if the lines would work is if I talked like that whilst I was working and say the lines out loud. And when you've done that for 3 or 4 days, you can't actually stop. So at the end of the day, it did make life interesting. So games.
Dreadnought.
Yeah, I'm working on a game for a German company now called Dreadnought, which is enormous spaceship combat. Which instead of being sort of individual piloting a sort of an X-wing, it is you're in command of a vast 3,000 strong cruise battleship Dreadnought in extraordinary combat, and that is so games are enormously good fun. I didn't. The possibility for creativity, even when you're in the framework of something like Tolkien's world or the Alien movie, and an Alien Isolation, to go back to that for a moment, it really is a sequel to the original film. So there isn't the additional real estate of Aliens and all the other movies to deal with. It was simply trying to recreate that sense of claustrophobia, survival horror rather than action. But even within those constraints, I find it enormously creative, and it's great to work with the teams, the designers and the level designers of the things they've got going in games. So as essentially, I have to admit, pretty much a non-gamer, mainly because I don't have time to do that because of see before all the writing, that I don't have time to do that. To enter that world and sort of be the innocent at the table, where I've got some good ideas about characters, but to actually talk to game designers and be the only person who puts his hand up and say, I don't really understand why you're doing that, and for everybody else at the table to go, we don't know why we're doing that, let's not do that after all, was probably a very useful thing to do, and I love the way the games have turned out.
I mean, you mentioned so much great stuff there. Just on the subject of Guardians,
yes.
What did you think of the film adaptation? And obviously, we are getting a Guardians sequel, given the fact it's
indeed.
What would you like to see for that? And
obviously, I'd like to see more slavish attention to my comic. I don't know. It was just. When I was writing Guardians back in 2008, first of all, they're not the Guardians of the Galaxy. The Guardians of the Galaxy is a 1969 team of completely different characters. And I've always loved Marvel Cosmic, and so it's characters like Star-Lord and Rocket Raccoon and Groot, and they were just sort of forgotten characters. And Cosmic itself at the time in Marvel was sort of forgotten. It wasn't considered to be a big seller. And it's something I loved. I like superheroes in a science fiction environment. I don't know whether that's a particularly British thing, a sort of legacy of 2000 AD and things like that, but it really suited me. And they let me write Nova, and then there was a discussion about doing a team book, and so it really was a matter of cherry picking all these half-forgotten characters and putting them into some kind of team, a team of misfits, and then having fun with it. And to me, it was always very character-driven, because that was what it was about. It was about individual characters rather than about huge space themes so much. And I called them the Guardians of the Galaxy, cheekily nicking the title off the other team that everybody had forgotten about, simply because it was at least a name that was in currency in the Marvel Universe. And Marvel let me do pretty much everything. I was killing people left, right and centre, I was inventing stuff, and nobody cared, because those weren't even important toys that they wanted to be put back in the box. As long as I returned them relatively intact, they didn't really mind, as long as I was telling a good story. So imagine my complete and utter shock when they said, you know what, it's been optioned, and it is likely to be one of the next Marvel movies. And I'm like, wait a minute, hang on, how do you? It's not one of the big hitters. People don't know what it is. I think it showed enormous courage on Marvel's part to think not only will they take essentially D-list characters that are not world-famous franchises and make a huge movie out of it, but also to expand the Marvel universe into the cosmic realm, which is obviously one of the things it did in the most spectacular fashion. I thought the movie was marvellous. We went to the European premiere, so we went up the blue carpet, as it turned out. But that was a fantastic thing to see. I already had a couple of set visits. James Gunn, the director, had very kindly made it clear that it was, although it wasn't following the storyline, it was inspired by the tone and atmosphere of the comic run, and asked me if I'd like to go to visit Shepperton and see them film it, which I did. So I've been on board the Milano and the Dark Aster, and I met Star-Lord, and I was high-fived by Zoe Saldana. So, that's okay.